I was offended by the fact that he really felt empowered to where he could try to determine my path.
Right.
He can't put anything in my path that's going to stop me. And so at that moment, the more he resisted, the more fuel it gave me to push right through him.
To have once been a criminal is no disgrace. To remain a criminal is the disgrace. I formerly was a criminal. I formerly was in prison. I'm not ashamed of that.
Hey, y'all, check this out. Today's going to be a great one. Listen, I'm super excited to have my guy, Ray, be able to join us on the show today. So how you feeling today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. Well, thanks for agreeing to come on the show today and talk to my audience. I really appreciate it. Audience, as you already know, on this show, we believe that nobody can introduce a person like the person themselves. So I'm gonna turn the floor over to you, Ray, and allow you to introduce yourself, get an audience a little bit of information about yourself, what you do for a living.
All right. My name is Ray. I am an attorney and a real estate broker in the Bay Area. I operate a law firm as well as a real estate firm. However, I used to be a criminal.
He sent me to the brokenhearted to proclaim liberty to captives and opening up the prisons to those that are in bond. Let's go. Can you talk to the people a little bit about how you grew up, your upbringing, where it was, and things that happened in your household?
Well, I grew up in a family of 6 children. Both of my parents in the household before my dad passed away a few years back. Him and my mom had been married for about 61, 62 years. So it was a very solid family, middle class. Both worked very hard and raised their children to do so as well.
Sweet. What city was that? Where about?
That was in the city of San Pablo. And all the schools I went to were in Richmond. So San Pablo and Richmond are side by side. So if you grew up in San Pablo, you grew up in Richmond.
Fair enough. There you go. Richmond, California, right? No doubt. Reflecting back on your life, are you able to recollect or, I guess, pinpoint a time or a decision or anything in your life that led you to pursue into illegal activities?
It wasn't so much an event, but it was a time in my life where I had a tunnel vision and I didn't see a path to make the type of money that I wanted to make by working a 9-to-5 job. I was probably around 20 years old, maybe 21. I married early, had my firstborn early, and I actually bought my first house when I was 19 and my second house when I was 21. So at 21 years old, buying a second house, married with a newborn child, obviously there was a need for money. And between my wife at the time and myself, we were not making enough money to support the lifestyle that I wanted. So I wouldn't refer to that as an event, but just a time frame.
I'm not surprised. Typically, we find ourselves in tough crunches. I mean, not only you, people like myself and many others. And sometimes we make bad decisions based on our circumstances. So it sounds like you had made a decision based off of your circumstances to get your hands on some more money.
Absolutely. I refer to that as the why in the road in life. And we come to those intersections often, and we have a decision to make. We can either go left or we can go right. And we don't know that it's the wrong path until we get down too deep. And then we've got to figure out, do we continue that path or do we resolve that was the wrong path, turn around, come back and travel down the right path? So at that point in time in life, I was at a Y in a road as to whether I wanted to make legitimate money and just live a normal life, or to do something other than that and potentially make unlimited amount of money at a young age. And that was the decision. That was the path that I chose at the time.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people make that same decision. Can you tell us about a moment that you came to realization that it was time for you to give up all antisocial pursuits and become the person that I'm looking at today on the screen?
What's unique about my situation is that before I actually got sentenced to state prison, the judge sent me to San Quentin for what they call a 90-day observation. So
Right.
it's where the judge is on the fence as to whether he or she wants to give you a county jail probationary sentence, especially if you're a first-time offender, or whether he just wants to send you to state prison and reject probation. And so this judge was on the fence because I was a first-time offender. It was white collar, but at the same time, it was extensive white collar. So he was on the fence whether or not he should give me a probationary sentence or a state prison sentence, because I had went to trial and I lost. The offers up until then were all probationary. But of course, I took my chance and I lost. And so he was faced with the decision to give me the midterm or to give me probation. So he sent me over to San Quentin for a 90-day observation. You interview with a counselor, you interview with a psych, and probably someone at the associate warden level. And the whole objective is to interview you based on their corrections and rehabilitation experience, and to make a determination as to whether or not you are suitable for probation or whether probation should be rejected. So after being in San Quentin for 45 to 60 days, I was sent back to the county jail. I didn't get into any trouble during the 90-day observation. I thought the interviews went well. And when I got back, I was told that they did not go well, that all three said that I was not suitable for probation and that probation should be rejected. So that's what happened. And the judge sentenced me to 3 years for all of the convictions.
I know you, right? And we'll talk about that a little later, but
yeah.
It's funny. I'm thinking about, you never told the story to me before, but it's unique because if that hadn't happened to you and they had allowed you to just get probation and go back out to the streets, you probably wouldn't be the man you are today. Well, maybe you will be, but maybe you had to go through some other things.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I do remember when the judge sentenced me, and he's a very, very well-liked judge on both sides of the table, whether it be the defense or whether it be the prosecution. He's always been fair to defendants in the past. He's probably the longest sitting judge in California history. He was a judge for 50 years in our county. He's got a court building named after him, and they built it while he was alive.
Okay.
And I do remember at my sentencing, when he sentenced me away, I mean, things got really fuzzy, of course, because once he said state prison,
Yes.
probation is denied, the room started, moving slow, and all of a sudden I picture myself going back to San Quentin when I had resigned to the fact that I was never going back there. But I do remember he said, when you get out, come and see me. And so I didn't think of it at the time, but after I was released, I did go back to that judge to see him because he said, come back and see me. So when I went to see him, he saw me come into the courtroom. And after he finished the proceeding, he came down from the bench, and it actually scared me because he embraced me. He hugged me, and he was like, how you been? I said, I've been okay. And he said, how long have you been home? And I told him I had been home for about 6 months. He asked me what I was doing with myself. I told him, and he looked at me, he says, I could have given you probation. And I said, I'm aware of that. And he said, do you know why I didn't give you probation? I said, because the reports, the recommendations weren't good. He says, well, it was that too, but he says there was something more. And I said, well, what was that? And he said, because I believe that if I had given you probation, you would not have stopped. I believe that you have a bigger destination in life than what that lifestyle would lead you. You're very bright. I believe that you're very resilient, and that this can, either make you or break you. And if it makes you, sky's the limit. And so for that moment was, life-changing for me.
When did you begin preparing yourself for your release from prison? And then how did you go about doing it?
Well, after arriving in the second time after probation was rejected, I knew that in order for me to fully transition from the previous path, that I had to follow all of the rules, meaning volunteering time, helping other people, things that uplift me from the inside without any gain from the outside. And so I volunteered a lot for the different programs while I was at Sierra Conservation Center, and then as well spent a lot of time in the law library, reading, learning vocabulary words that I didn't know before. For example, similar to Malcolm X's approach, I had read his autobiography in the county jail, and he had educated himself essentially over the 12-year sentencing, or the 12-year period that he was in prison. But he did so by starting with the dictionary, the letter A. So that's what I did. I started with the letter A, and whenever I came across a word that I didn't know the definition of, I would take that word and that definition, and I would just type it 8 to 10 times until I could memorize through repetition what that word meant. So I think by the time that I was released, I got up to letter M or N or something like that.
Wow, that's good stuff, man. That's called preparation. You know what I mean? I mean, it's deep. I mean, sometimes, you talk to individuals in prison today, and we have people that we come across that have 15 years, and they wait till like year 11. Some of them, not everybody, but some people wait till like year 11 and start preparing themselves. But you don't have time to waste because you don't know what's going to happen between year 11 and 15. You may get an early release day, right? So you started preparing yourself, it sounds like almost immediately. And that's good stuff.
Yeah, and staying out of trouble was really important. And so to do that as well, I volunteered in the GED program. So I helped about maybe around 8 or 9 prisoners obtain their GED while I was there during the 17 or 18 months that I was actually at that facility. And then I also volunteered on the MAC committee, which is the inmates. They acted as liaisons between the general population and staff. So with that came privileges. I mean, I could pretty much, there were 3 yards at Sierra Conservation Center with a MAC committee ID. I could go to any yard. I could go into any dorm. It didn't matter. Certain areas that were out of bounds for the general population was not out of bounds for MAC committee members. And probably the most powerful thing was the ability to make dorm moves, move people in or out of dorms without having to provide a reason why. All we needed to do was just tell them it was a security risk, and that we needed to move one inmate out of one dorm into another dorm, or even to another yard for that matter.
What made you decide to come back into the Sierra Conservation Center to encourage, inspire, and motivate the people that were sitting there, including myself? I know you have been doing it before I came, but what made you do this?
Well, I was released in '98, and I had made a commitment to myself that on the anniversary of my release, I would call the facility and talk to one of the gentlemen that I worked for in back then they had a vocational meat cutting program, and I was the clerk. Said, Ray says, things have been working really well for you. And he says, we have this program called pre-release. Have you ever thought about maybe speaking to inmates, telling them about, your success? And I told him at the time I wasn't really into public speaking, but I was going to have to take a public speaking class for my degree. So I might as well start now and get practice. And so he says, if I could arrange it, would you come in and speak to the pre-release class? And I said, sure. And I came in, he got me in there, got me cleared. And that's where it all started back in 2002. And I've been doing it ever since. So over, 18, 19 years.
Wow, man. Well, look, I take my hat off to you. I don't have it on, but I'll take it off, bro, because, hey, listen, you really inspire a lot of people, man. I'm talking about thousands and thousands of people that you would never probably even come to probably learn what you've done for them. And after seeing what you were able to do, I myself made a plan to come back into the prison on my own accord and to be able to walk in when I want to come in and leave when I'm ready to leave. And I said, when I come in there, I want to be able to inspire, encourage, motivate individuals. And so I started doing the same thing, right? In probably like 2015. And once again, it all started because I met you, I believe, man. And then as I was doing this, as you know, I met one of the instructors in the prison. And I told him I went through the pre-release course, and I told him it was a gentleman that came and spoke. And I said, he really motivated me. He was like, was it a brother? I'm like, yeah. He said, that's Ray. And I said, well, you know him? He's like, yeah, he still come. I say, you have to introduce me to him. And as you know, from there, he connected us together, man. And we've been going to the prison together for the last, I don't know what, four years, maybe?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years at least.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. And bro, listen, man, it's always a pleasure to go up there with you, man, and be able to speak next to you. Because like I said, I remember sitting in that room and you spoke directly to me, and we go back into the same room to motivate the other people, man. I don't know how you feel about that, man, but I'm excited. I appreciate you.
It was, surreal. I mean, I remember the first time actually going back to that facility and to, walk into the classrooms and to walk past the library that I had spent so much time in. It's like an out-of-body experience. And then to be able to leave on your own accord, like you described, is, it's surreal.
What plan did you have for yourself before you left Jamestown?
Follow the rules, pay restitution to the victims, the money that I had taken, and to get back on the right path and to work 9 to 5, whatever it took to stay stable. So that was my short-term plan. The way that I look at it, it's like an airplane that is taking off. Every airplane, whether it be at a private airport or a big international airport, they cannot leave the ground without a flight plan. And flight plans are very crucial to a successful flight. So for example, let's say that you are up in a 747 and there's a medical emergency. At any given time, if you look at the FAA's map that tracks all of the flights that are in the air, at any given time, there are probably around 4,500 flights in the air in the United States. And so when you're looking at their map, you see this high concentration, almost like looking at the equator of all these flights that, you thinking like, man, one slows down while the other one speeds up, they're going to hit each other. Right. It's not like they're right behind each other, but they are in the same vicinity of each other as far as grouping is concerned. And one of the reasons why they do that is because if there is a medical emergency, they can immediately start their descent, and in most cases have an airport where they could land within 30 to 45 minutes. Wow. So that's the first plan of action. The other is they'll send them over water, because if for whatever reason there's a mechanical emergency, they could dump that fuel over water and then turn in and hit an airport. So those are contingency plans. It took a while before I was able to get that long-term flight plan into play. And that happened once I went back and talked to the judge again. And the judge asked me about college. I told him I didn't know how to get into college or how to do anything like that. And so he told me to go over to the community college, to go into the admissions office, speak with one of the interns over there. And he says, they'll set you on the right path. And that's exactly what I did. I left the courthouse, went straight over to admissions. And it was at a time, I think it was probably summer session was about to start. And I met with someone. They told me they had to do a test to determine my reading level, my writing level, and mathematics. So I took that entry exam, and then they told me which classes that I should start with. And that's where it all began for me.
That's funny because you say you went immediately over from the courtroom to the school, right? Yes. And it's funny because reality is this, where I talk to a lot of individuals who say they want to accomplish things, man. And, a lot of times what holds people up is procrastination, right? And these fake ass promises they make themselves, right? But you went from hearing the information, telling you where to go, and you immediately went and applied it. And
Right.
you didn't procrastinate, because a lot of times when people procrastinate, that, well, I'm gonna do it tomorrow end up being next week, next month, 3 years from now, it never happens. So I'm glad to hear that you saying that for the audience. They know that you have to sometimes get things done immediately. Don't wait.
Well, it's interesting. I went to back to Sierra Conservation on Friday. They started doing the graduation ceremonies again. One of the things that I spoke to the graduates about, in prison, naturally our ability to focus increases.
Right.
For example, it's been over 20 years since I've been released. I could still hear a CO's keys.
Yes.
Before I even see them. If they're around the corner, if they're 50 yards away or whatever, I still hear those keys. And the inmates started to why is that? It's because what those keys represent to us. Those keys represent freedom.
Wow.
They represent freedom to leave that dorm, whether it be for chow, whether it be to walk the yard, whether it be to get mail, right?
Yeah.
Those keys represent something that humans that we want, that's snatched from us, that we're being deprived of. Our ability to focus on something all of a sudden has increased more than the distraction of what's going on in our surroundings, like the dorm, the TV, or whatever. We could hear those keys coming 4 doors down, because all of a sudden the scales are tilted, shifted to the focus. So when you're in prison, your ability to focus is much higher than if you're on the street, because you're distracted by life. For example, I'm sure that after you did your sentence, comparing it to when you were on the street before doing your sentence, just think of a particular person that you know. It could be in your family, could be a friend, could be whatever. And then after you did the amount of time that you did, thinking about, man, if I was on the street, I would have created Microsoft or Apple. I would have been doing so many things. We think about that when we're locked up, right? But then when you hit the street, you see that person, whether it be family, friend, or whatever, and they're in the same position that they were in when you went in. And it's like, what have you been doing? I've been gone for X amount of years. You were broke when I came in. You are broke now. You was living with a chick when you living with a chick now. You were unemployed. You've been on the street this whole time. What have you been doing?
No doubt.
Standing still. A lot of people stand still. They do. And so I'm speaking in terms of, let's say, the district attorney that prosecuted me in the case. I mean, it seems like he took my case very personal, required to do some things that he wasn't smart enough to do. He had to look at the investigation to learn, wow, how did he know how to do that? How did he learn how to do this and all of this kind of stuff? It was crimes against insurance companies and the like. And so it was like, how does, learn how to do this stuff? So the fact that at such a young age, early 20s, that I wasn't out selling dope or robbing people, it was almost like he was offended by that. Right. And so he took it personal. He won the trial. It was one of the even to this day, I kid you not, it's on his resume that he took down one of the biggest rings operating out of Richmond. He still brags about it to this day. And it's funny to me because his limited thinking, he thinks he won the war. It was just a battle. So when he started to figure that out, he figured, wait a minute, the enemy is still standing. What can I do to stop him from, I have to keep him below me.